Hey, welcome back to Hold the Line with Mike Solon. Seattle is in the news again, not just nationally, but it's an international story because public safety continues to be politicized. Stick around, we'll break it down.
The line must be drawn here. This far, no farther. This is where we hold them. This is where we fight.
We will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish. Not a fight. Hold the line!
All right, so what happened at Cal Anderson Park last Saturday? Well, I can tell you one thing that did happen and continues to happen is that public safety is politicized on a continued basis here in the city of Seattle. So what we've called it here is the union remarks on this is that this is Seattle's public safety political reality. That's essentially what this is. So if you've not been paying attention to our X account at SPOG 1952, we've done a campaign called This is Seattle, where we obviously highlighted our last podcast with Danny Westnut, who was remarking how crime is down. SPD's numbers prove that the union is wrong. Well, no, we're not wrong. Look at all the recent shootings, triple homicide. About a week ago, we had another triple shooting this morning where a person passed away. Unfortunately, they had another person get stabbed fatally. This is a serious problem that crime is on the rise, all because we just don't have enough cops. So what happened at Cal Anderson Park is a part of this problem, is we just don't have the staffing. So obviously we know what's in the news is that there's been many posts about what's going on in terms of Parks Department giving access to a religious group who just wanted to have families and have a concert talking about Christ. The problem is that we've highlighted how big of a problem this is because it's in a really progressive area in the city, Capitol Hill, Cal Anderson Park, and it's commonly known that that is the grounds, the proving grounds, if you will, for Antifa. And so the group got a permit at that park, which created turmoil, political turmoil. And our officers, woefully understaffed, are put in the middle to try to keep peace. Well, as we saw events unfold, and I want to thank Jonathan Cho. His work has been incredible in terms of documenting this public safety predicament, the politics behind it. So we had a response given to all the officers that were assaulted, obviously, because we stand up and defend the officers. 3 officers were hospitalized because they were attacked by the Antifa mob. And so on Sunday, I wrote a piece that's gone viral. And it goes, some of it as follows. This is our opening paragraph. You can find it again at SPOG 1952. Public safety in the city of Seattle continues to be politicized, and violent Antifa criminals once again dominate Seattle's public safety conversation with their insane use of political violence. This is Seattle's public safety political reality. That sets the tone. And it's a long piece. I suggest you read it. Link is in the description. But I break it down even further. And so we've had over 700 cops in the past decade leave this city due to how politics has been infused in the public safety conversation. Typically what ends up happening, especially in the past 10 years, is that the police will go into a situation, and if it doesn't work out and the optics are bad, well, then the police get blamed. Now look at what happened at Cal Anderson Park. Here we are again. We're put in a difficult situation, which I've highlighted in our press release. That's an untenable situation, a political quagmire, as I referred to it. And we're there to try to keep the peace. But when the mayor responds, who is the executive in charge of public safety, blaming one group, the religious group, not blaming the Antifa mob that continues to dictate political terms in this city via their violence, we have a problem. And that those Antifa criminals, those domestic terrorists, were the ones that assaulted the police And time again, they're calling us fascists. They're calling the religious right fascists. And it goes on and on and on. Now we've got cops in the hospital. We got people that are running for to be the new mayor, calling for more police accountability, saying that the police were the ones that acted and caused this violence. It's totally predictable, as we laid out in our statement. So now we've got local media, courtesy of Como 4, Chris Daniels. I still talk with local media, Chris Daniels in particular. I think he's somewhat reasonable. And obviously, Jeremy Harris on Como does a great job. But everybody else, I just don't really give the time of day because they don't accurately depict what's happening. But I'll give deference to Chris because he's still respectful, moderate. There's some things that he does that I disagree, but it is what it is. So what Chris did yesterday is that he looked and talked with two council members. One in particular is Bob Kettle, who is the public safety chair for the Seattle City Council. And he asked Bob, council member Kettle, I should say, what his thoughts are in terms of our press release and my interpretation that Seattle police officers were put into a political quagmire. Mind you, the mayor didn't blame Antifa, didn't hold Antifa to account, only blamed the religious side who had a permit granted in what would be considered a tenuous park in terms of not having any violence, particularly that these two entities are in the same area. And that's our biggest gripe here. Why did this occur? Either the Parks Department was naive or it was done deliberate to create a clash. And given all the resources that we've had over the years, $200 million for a consent decree, policy changes, use of force changes, de-escalate, all of this. But here we are again, where we've just given the truth in our statement, giving the reality that's on the ground by the cops that do this difficult job in this city that is hyper-politicized. Here's the public safety chair's take on our statement in terms of reacting to Chris's question on whether or not cops were put into a political quagmire.
I know the union, the guild, has said they were put into a political quagmire here. Do you see that the same way?
No, I don't. And this is where we have to get to the facts, but I don't. Hey, we have to have the ability to have protests and then the counter protests. Each should be respecting the other's ability and right to do so. And then the police, with the POET program, with their improved communications program, needs to be communicating. And then for those parties to be respecting the police too, in terms of keeping distance and the like.
See, that's the problem. Is that the concert, the religious folks who had a permit granted should be allowed to have their gathering in any park across the city. Yes, Cale Anderson Park is an area that is more often than not occupied by Antifa, and that's their headquarters. I even called it in the press release Antifa land. So I've already covered that, but the problem is that Bob disagrees that we were not put in a political quagmire, and he says both groups should respect public safety and the police. Okay, good, Bob. I agree with you there. The problem is that the religious groups were just holding a concert. They had families. They didn't start any of this violence. None of them were arrested. Bob fails to recognize that it was Antifa, the ones that are trying to silence opposing voices or positions in the social discourse. He didn't highlight them. They are the ones that assaulted the police. Our job is to keep order. But why was this permit granted, or why in the heart of this city needs to be investigated? And Bob does get into that to a degree. But aside that, you can't expect Antifa, who continue to use violence, political violence, to smash opposing voices. That's the definition of fascism. But yet they're the ones calling the other side, who were peaceful, fascists. It's bizarre land here in Seattle. I think Bob is living in fantasy land if he thinks that Antifa are going to be reasonable people. They're not. And time again, this city has coddled those violent actors, those criminal mobs of Antifa people, those domestic terrorists. And those people feel as if they can run roughshod over Seattle and continue to attack police. That's our position. Why not call that out, Bob? It blows my mind.
And that's going to be a factor there too, in terms of respecting the direction in order for both sides to be able to do their protests. And then the third actor point, those may be intended to creating and inciting violence. That needs to be addressed, and that's, one of the things that always comes out, the first reports are always generally wrong or incomplete. We need to have a full accounting of what happened and understand that, so then we can be smart in terms of the policies that, like, for example, SPD has.
Well, the policies have been revised, polled, looked at again. I mean, it's my understanding that we're looking at the last crowd control policy that the judge for the DOJ with the DOJ consent decree can look at to say, you know what, this satisfies it. Seattle, you're done with your 13 years long, $200 million experience that is the Department of Justice consent decree. Okay, I get it. That's Bob's position. Yeah, both sides need to respect. Well, it was clear that one side respected and didn't cause any mayhem. It was the other side, the Antifa, the criminal mob, that continues to dictate political terms in this city. And again, the politicians don't call that out, and the cops are right in the middle. Chris then goes and talks with Joe Hollingsworth, who's a council member in District 3. And here's her take, and I kind of like what she says. This is somebody that comes across to me as being reasonable. It's the best take I think a politician has had with the situation. Let's get Chris get into it real quick.
The FBI's Deputy Director Dan Bongino suggesting on social media his team is investigating targeted violence against religious groups in Seattle.
And so what Chris is doing is he's tying in how Deputy Director Dan Bongino of the FBI, who's talking about what appears to be perhaps targeted violence against religious groups in the city of Seattle, that it appears that the FBI is going to be investigating. That's big news, really big news. And so, yeah, we welcome the federal investigation to this because Seattle needs help. We're in serious trouble if Antifa continues to rule public safety here in this city and our political leaders don't stand up to these mobs. Here's Joe Hollingsworth's take.
They're well within their right to investigate. We uphold the First Amendment speech of folks, and I think we put our officers in a very, very tough position.
Seattle Council Parks Committee Chair Joy Hollingsworth said the city needs to perform better on the permitting process, noting Mayday USA's request to rally at Cal Anderson Park on Saturday might have snuck through as it came from a little-known ministry in rural Oregon that the mayor later labeled as right-wing.
This is not gay community versus religion, LGBTQ versus Christianity. I'm a Christian myself. I'm a gay woman myself. All those things cross over. Take that piece out. Now you have people that are saying gay people are vile, or we're coming to the darkest place in Seattle. Those things are troubling.
The mayor's office issued yet another statement suggesting there has been no official notice of an investigation outside a vague tweet, and he'll continue to stand up for Seattle residents and values under pressure from the Trump administration.
And of course now, so they're bringing in the Trump administration to make this more politicized. I mean, it just keeps going on and on and on. Look, you could argue whether or not the religious group is right-wing, left-wing, or moderate. The problem is that the issue is, I should say, is that it doesn't matter. I mean, these people have a right to occupy and get a permit for any Seattle park, right? But then we can't bow down and cow to criminal mobs who continue to dictate public safety terms. That's what the issue is, period. Can we just get some political courage from our elected leaders to stop this? Because this is going to continue. And that's the issue. And so I go on with this press release. Mind you, I didn't release it to media, local media. I just think that they're just shills now. I really do. So we just post things on X, and obviously, media still picks it up. So I just don't really defer to them anymore because they're just not proper players in this game. It just doesn't make any sense. So, I mean, to continue with some of this review of this decision to put the religious group at Cal Anderson Park. SPOG welcomes a mayoral review of yesterday's Seattle Parks Department's decision to allow a demonstration permit for families who wanted to exercise their First Amendment rights at Cal Anderson Park. What we are struggling to understand is why was this park chosen and authorized, especially when this park is commonly known as the heart of Antifa land. We have no doubt that the city's decision, as naive or deliberate as it was, put police officers in an untenable predicament. Whether it's our job or not, we were once again ordered to put ourselves into a political quagmire. That's facts. SPOG understands we will once again get blamed, which we have, and more calls will be heard for more accountability. Cue stage right, Katie Wilson, who's the ultra-progressive mayoral candidate, who's blaming police as we, apparently started the violence. You can't make this up in the city of Seattle. It is bizarro land. So, lastly with this, and I'll just pick out another paragraph of our press release. To be clear, we do not have the proper staffing to handle any more of these demonstrations that turn into mass arrests. Those are facts. Even more importantly, we as police union understand that this city lacks the political will to allow police to use the necessary tools to hold back criminal mobs to protect life and property. This once again puts lives in danger. Haven't we learned from 2020? Will our prosecutors and judges hold these criminals accountable? Will the activists call for more accountability? This is Seattle's public safety political reality. Absolutely spot on. And we'll break down the last little bit of our staffing situation. Okay, so the staffing crisis is what really is driving this thing, is that we're highlighting that we're put in a political quagmire. We've been assaulted. 700 cops have left this city in 10 years because of the politics and how cops continue to get blamed. We're used as the tool, then the scapegoat, on and on and on. I say that nauseum. Okay, our morale is in the gutter. And when you have elected officials that don't really pinpoint what the problems are, Antifa, and then blame other groups that were peaceful, that just had families there celebrating, we got a serious situation. Now the FBI is apparently investigating, on and on and on. So here's the reality. 28% of the current deployable officers that the city of Seattle has with their Seattle Police Department are eligible to retire right now as I speak to you. That's about 850 cops. Excuse me, it is not about 850 cops. It is about 280 cops right now. 28% out of 850, 280 cops can walk out this door. I can tell you right now, from what I hear, and we have our ears to the ground, we have the pulse of the membership, the people that work patrol, that do investigative work. If they're thrown into these riotous situations where we're asked to hold the line, hold the line with Mike Solon. That's why this podcast exists. They're going to be walking out the door. It's not a threat. It's not a work slowdown. That's the reality because they're tired. I put it in our press release. Cops are just tired of this political quagmire, this untenable situation the city continues to put us in because we have feckless leaders who will not hold people accountable and call for what it is. This is Antifa who are doing this to our community time and time again. Look at what happened a couple of days ago at the Rattle in Seattle. Look at the videos. You've got families with kids that are being assaulted by the mob right on Cherry Street as they're trying to get into the rally to represent the religious side, the concert side. This is devolving into something that is truly remarkable and a huge problem for this city, particularly for the mayor. So what do we do? How do we get enough cops here? How do we not lose cops? Well, number one, the solution is pretty damn simple if you ask me. You got to stop politicizing public safety. You're going to need to publicly back police and state we will not tolerate criminals in this city, that every citizen, any group, has the right to gather and express their First Amendment rights in a park with a permit, any park across the city, period. We will not tolerate assaults in our community, regardless if you're left, right, in the middle, and we're going to back the cops who follow policy, period. That's number one. The second is, we've been out about a year and a half now without a contract. The only thing that's really getting people in the door to apply for the Seattle Police Department right now, as the mayor is boasting, the media is pumping the tires of that, is because we're the highest paid in the state. You're damn right we are, because you got to work in this mess. I've heard calls, well, if you're just so unhappy, why don't you just leave? Okay, that's easier said than done. If you get a lateral somewhere, you got to take up your family, maybe have to move your house. You're going to have to go through a background check. You're going to make less money. There's all sorts of things you have to cross over some hurdles to make that a reality. And you might not be starting at the senior level pay anymore. You might be on probation. There's all sorts of things you got to think about. So it's easier said than done to just leave. So, but you got 28% of the current 850 cops that are ready to bounce because of this political issue, because we continue to be blamed and the easy scapegoat for our political elected leaders. Enough is enough. We need to get a contract. You need to publicly support the police and publicly state that any criminal actions against anybody, regardless of religion or creed, will not be tolerated in this city. It's that simple. But yet our political leaders fail to say that simple thing. That's why we're in the position that we're in. We've absolutely had enough of this. I'm interested to hear your comments about our press release. It's gone viral. It took me a long time to write that thing. And if we don't do those basic things on a political level, you're obviously going to see an FBI investigation, allegedly. We welcome that review. We need help in this city because we're not getting the help public safety-wise, period. The cops are just being abandoned. And we're the last bastion of hope to create a barrier between the mob and people who are just trying to exercise their First Amendment rights in a peaceful way. Why is it that the mob is being glorified? It's bizarre land. And to tie it to national Trump presidency, it just blows my mind, quite honestly. Can we just focus? Can we just get somebody moderate with courage to lead, please, in this city? Please. That's all we're asking for as cops. Just give us the basic support. It's not much to ask. If we don't get those things, we're going to have a long, long summer. A real long summer. I'm extremely worried about the public safety predicament here in this city and the cops that remain here. I've said this on the Ari Hoffman show. We'll put a link in the description of that audio tag. I did an interview about 3 days ago. I remarked about the men and women that still work here. I'm amazed by, their commitment of service, their humble service. They still show up. Yeah, they're tired. I'm tired. We're tired of the political situation here. But we're selfless people that put our lives to protect those that really hate us. I mean, we would die for those Antifa people just to protect their rights, right? If they're in trouble. If you had any other group that tried to attack them, hurt them, of course, we're going to put our life on the line. Even those that hate us, that's the job, that's the role. We welcome that mission. But I tell you what, you come after us, then we're going to hold you to account. That's for sure. But if we don't get those things, we're in for a long, long summer. We're also proud of the fact that we have one of the biggest and strongest LGBTQ plus officers in this nation, one of the most in any agency. They're great people. We're human beings. Every cop, every race, every ethnicity, we're here to serve without politics. So my plea to the community and our elected leaders, remove the politics out of public safety. Support your police. We've been under consent decree for 13 years, now going on 14. It appears to be a financial grift. $200 million. We've changed policy after policy, use of force after use of force, gone through de-escalation, crisis intervention, yada, yada, yada. Can we just get somebody to call out the Antifa mob that continue to dictate here and back the police, please, so we can protect the public? Remove politics. If we do that, and you watching this, if you agree with this message, I'm asking you to get off the couch, get involved, elect people that are based in common sense and reality, that don't blur the lines of public safety and intentionally inject politics into this conversation. Get involved, please. Help us out. We got to save this department. Otherwise, we're in for a long, long summer, and we're going to lose a ton more people. And I don't know what the future looks like. If we lose 100 more cops, I think you can pull the shade down and say, doesn't look really good. If we do that, we can all continue to hold the line. Thanks, everybody.